Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Hockey Writers Roundtable here. We are on day one, end of day one of free agency, and it was a busy day to say the least. We had a trade. We had a bunch of the big names go off the board. Actually, there's only two left on the top 30 list that we had on the hockeywriters.com, and it's only Vladimir Tarasenko and Adam Henrique left on that list. So pretty much all the big names went on day one. So we're going to talk a bit about that. I got Jacob Billington and Mike Fink here. Jacob, how's it going?
Good, and I will just add in, make it down to 29 because Adam Henrique just signed with the Oilers.
There we go. We only have one left now.
Yeah.
So yeah, busy day. We'll dissect a bit of these signings. We're not going to go through them all because there are obviously quite a few. But we'll talk about the teams that did the most, some of the busier teams, some of the ones that maybe didn't even dent the market at all. If it's a good thing, bad thing. But let's start with probably the biggest name that was on the market after all the other guys kind of re-signed with their own team. Sam Reinhart, re-signed with Florida. Jake Gensel trade to Tampa, re-signed. And so those were the biggest names still left. And then they were gone. And pretty much Steven Stamkos was the biggest name on the list. And he went to an odd team in my mind. The Nashville Predators, when there was talk about him going to Detroit, going to maybe Vancouver. There's some other teams on that list as well. Jacob, I'll start with you. Were you surprised that Stamkos signed in Nashville, of all places, than the others? We'll talk more about them because they did a lot on day one.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of jersey swaps with Stamkos wearing the Predators jersey, and it just looks so wrong to not see him in a Tampa jersey. So I was surprised he went anywhere. Like at this point, I wasn't surprised that he left Tampa. I'm just surprised that he signed somewhere else, and it just feels so wrong. I think it's a great fit, especially if he's going to be on the wing, play on the second line, probably with Marchessault if they want to keep their top line together from last year. So I'm not surprised. I think it's a great fit. The contract, I think it's a perfect deal, maybe a little bit high on the AAV, but it's really hard to complain with Stamkos at 4 years and $8 million.
Yeah, great. I mean, the number is actually really good for a lot of teams that probably would put that for sure for Stamkos, even though he is 34 years old, but he scored 40 goals last season. So it's not like he's slowing down. Mike, what did you think about the Stamkos going to Nashville?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's the context of what the Predators did and all the moves they made, which I guess we'll dive more into, which probably if you take Stamkos in a vacuum, you're like, I don't know, the AAV is high. And I like the Stamkos. I thought any team that signed Stamkos was going to get more value off the ice than on it. Because when you look at Stamkos, obviously his production's still, I mean, he's still producing at a high level and he's still putting up great numbers and just playing great on in the offensive zone and overall. He's playing great. But the thing that I was really impressed with last year with the Lightning is he's one of those players that, especially in those dog days early in the season when you could tell the Lightning weren't doing well and they weren't going to make, and it looked like they weren't going to make the playoffs at times. And you have those guys at like Stamkos, really those like locker room presence players that just show up every day and know, hey, it's a long season. We're going to be there eventually. But those guys, the cliche lead by example, he's one of those guys that, even if the Predators don't get that same production, which I mean, they don't have Kucherov, so I mean, he's not gonna get the same sort of scoring chances, same opportunities. He has. I mean, the Predators have some skill, but still, it's that showing up every day, the like being that veteran for young players that they know what it takes to. He knows what it takes to make it through the regular season, through that grind, and then the playoffs. So that's also part of the value. The
Mm.
AAV not so much, but yeah, I still like this. Even at 33, I'm like, give him the 4 years. Yeah, it's fine.
It wasn't a crazy term. I mean, 4 years is my sweet spot whenever I look at contracts. I'm like 4 years. It's not too long, not too short. It's great for especially for some older guys. You're not pushing them up really high in their age. I mean, he'll be 38 when the deal is over, and that's still not ridiculous. And I think he'll probably be productive for most of those
Yeah,
years. Just looking at what he is doing right now.
like his skill set ages pretty well, I think, if I were to
Yeah,
say.
I'd say so too, for sure. All right. Well, I'll start with you, Mike, on who do you think was the next biggest signing after Stamkos? What was the biggest news that you thought that was of the day. I mean, it was full of signings, but
Yeah.
what was the next biggest one next to Stamkos?
Next, well, no, because I was thinking overall it's Jake Gensel still, but that's yesterday, so I guess you can't really include
Today.
that in the day. But yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind. I do think of the continuous Predator signings, which it's like give Barry Trotz the chance to make some moves, and look what happens. He was coaching on his last stop was coaching for the Islanders, where Lamoriello made no moves. So this is his first chance to. It's like a kid in a candy store. But
Yeah.
I like the Marchessault signing. I mean, that's the next one. I mean, it's on the Predators list. I think, yeah, like I just keep thinking about all the moves they made, and then you look at I think they got Brady Shea as well, and it's the it's just these continuous moves that they're making, and you're I think the interesting thing with the Predators is whether they should have made these moves or not. That's the debate, because are they thinking they're ahead of schedule now? Last season they were a pleasant surprise kind of team that kind of snuck into the playoffs. They weren't they were not nearly as good as their first round opponent, which was the Vancouver Canucks, which beat them in 6, but it was a series that was pretty one-sided. But I think for what's interesting for I mean we'll dive probably more into the Predators is that they think that they could accelerate the timeline, and they think that they're now a playoff team. Let's take the next steps. This could of course flop on them, where if like they're not there yet, then all of a sudden you're dealing with all this
Yeah.
like this cap space. But the Marchessault one particularly, because then it's like because you're adding I mean, former Conn Smythe winner, former talk about playoff proven player, just incredible, really good scorer still. So I think that's where I'd say that's the next best signing that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I would say Marchessault is probably the next one. He was, there was talk that he was going to go back to Vegas, and obviously they couldn't get anything done. 5 million, not a bad AAV for him either. And he was fifth on our top 30 list after a bunch of guys that's re-signed with their own teams. But yeah, Marchessault definitely, and he's still 33. He's again a little older, but he had 42 goals again last season, and there's another 40-goal scorer added to the Predators lineup. So that's a pretty big signing for them, adding 82 goals. That's not bad. Jacob, what about you? Their next biggest signing on this day here.
I wouldn't say that he was the biggest player, but I think that he is one of the best signings of the day, and big for the organization. And I think that this is a hot take because I saw a lot of people hating this deal. I'm going to go with Chandler Stevenson. He signed, I don't remember exactly what the contract was, 6 by 5.75, I believe. And 7 by 6.25. He's a really, really good two-way forward, center at that. And he's a 60-point guy. He's going to come into this lineup, teach Matty Beniers how to be exactly what Matty Beniers is going to be. And Stevenson's a guy that really struggled in the NHL. Not really struggled. He was making his mark, but he was traded for a 5th-round pick. Like, he wasn't an impact player for his whole career, and he's kind of come out of nowhere. And I think that this is a fantastic deal and helping develop, whether it's going to be Matty Beniers, showing Shane Wright the ropes. I just think that he is going to be a fantastic role model and a fantastic piece for the Seattle Kraken, who made some other moves that were impressive and whatnot. But I think Chandler Stevenson is going to have a huge impact.
Yeah, it was funny you mentioned that. I was funny because I was thinking Kraken, the biggest move I thought they made was Brandon Montour, which, I mean, it's 7 years, so you're questioning how much term, but he's the big player they're getting out of Florida, where it's like you're wondering who's going to stay from the Panthers and whatnot. But I thought of him, and it's like he's him and him on that blue line. That's something that they could actually use another two-way player like that. So I thought that of all the players on.
Yeah, Montour, I mean, 7 million actually is not that bad. And Marchessault's 5.5. I was looking at his previous cap hit. 5.5 is his new one, which, I mean, not not much different, but just to be accurate. There's, like I say, there's a lot of signings, a lot of bigger names. I mean, a lot of maybe not big marquee names, but some good guys that did go different places that could make a difference. And we'll talk about some winners and losers next. After this, Jacob, did you find any ones that were kind of strange to you, of where they went, high AAV, whatever you want to call it being strange, but was there any strange things that happened today that you think was why'd they do this?
Well, when you say it like that, strange things that happened, maybe it's where they went. It's
That,
David
yeah,
Perron to Ottawa. It's like he got suspended for 6 games for cross-checking Artem Zub in the side of the
yeah,
head. For Artem Zub did nothing. Now Perron was defending his teammate. He thought Zub was the one that hurt him. I get the defense to that, but he cross-checked him in the side of the head and got suspended 6 games for it. So he better be buying him a Rolex.
yeah.
On paper, I love the signing. I think that it's a great signing for Ottawa. He's going to be a kind of a offensive, but still a little bit gritty forward for them. Brings great leadership. I think he's going to be a great signing. I just think it was the strangest one of the day.
It was. I saw Perron to Ottawa. I'm like, well, of all teams,
Yeah.
it gets there. That was an interesting one for sure.
Well,
Mike, what
it
about
is
you? Of all the signings that were done today, was anything that kind of had you scratching your head for whatever you want to call
well,
strange?
it is interesting you talk about the David Perron going to Ottawa because I'm now thinking I've been thinking all day about Ryan McDonough on the Lightning and Steven Stamkos on the Predators, and
Yeah,
where it's like just swapping places. I actually also thought of Nikita Zadorov is now on the
yeah,
Bruins and Jake DeBrusk is on the Canucks.
yeah.
Might as well just traded the two players. It's always one of those like they should drop the gloves when they play each other. Uh, Confusing signing it wasn't a signing, but I've been just confused overall with what the Capitals have done. I tweeted earlier today, I'm going shopping. When I come back, I expect all the moves to happen. When I got back, Jacob Chikrin was traded. I'm just not sure what the Capitals, what direction they're going in, slash what they want to do. Like, I mean, I like Chicken. I think he'll he won't necessarily be that player that like, oh, he jumps off the stat sheet in Washington where it's like, oh, he's getting a ton of assists, he's assisting Ovi on all these, oh, Alexander Ovechkin on all these goals, but he's gonna be a valuable defenseman there. But when you add that, and then I guess Pierre-Luc Dubois from earlier in the week, I'm just like, what is going on there?
Hmm.
Where it's like you want to do you think you're contending because they did not look like a contender last year as much as their wild card showing says otherwise, which it doesn't because they were swept by the Rangers. I I think they have a good farm system. The Hershey Bears won the Calder Cup again. Take that for what it's worth. They could rebuild, but then it's like, okay, we're bringing Chikrin, we're bringing in. So I mean that it's not a signing, but it's a trade. Then I'm like,
Hmm.
I don't get it. A signing that I originally was like, oh, this is a great signing, but then I took a step back. This is from a few days ago. Is Chris Tanev, which I know it's a little old, but I mean it's from Sunday technically, so it's a little old. But I was like, oh great, the Lightning. I mean the Maple Leafs needed a defenseman in the playoffs, proven, turned around the Stars defense when he got traded. But then I took a step back. I'm like 34 years old. This is like Giordano, just cross out the label and write Tanev, where it's like they're doing the same things over and over again, expecting different results, which is like the Maple Leaf way, I guess. That's my rant.
I actually like the Tanev sign. I don't like the term. I actually like that because he's still playing at a pretty high level for a guy at that age. He's still blocking shots. He's still
Yeah.
like probably the best defensive defenseman still in the league. I wanted the Canucks to sign him, but not at that term. That's just too long for a guy how old he is. I mean, 6 years. I mean, oh, I don't
He's
like that.
34. Like at 37, do you think it's gonna look? I mean, Giordano was all right, I guess, but like even so, like, do you think at 37 he's gonna still be doing this? I don't know,
I don't know.
maybe.
It depends on how durable. I mean, that's the thing. He's always had injury problems, and I mean, not as much since he left Vancouver, but uh, the way he blocks shots, I mean, you're going to end up probably getting hurt at some point. Yeah. So and Tanev's signing was topical. I mean, it was officially signed today.
Yeah,
So
like
there you go.
everything officially at one, even though every deal was probably made already before that.
For sure. My strange one is Tyler Toffoli to San Jose. I don't understand a guy at his age going to a rebuilding team. I mean, yeah, I don't play with Macklin Celebrini, but even so, I mean, are the Sharks going to win in the next few years? I mean, is Toffoli thinking, oh, I'm
Yeah.
just going to mentor guys? He's not going to win. I mean, he's not going to win another cup there. I mean, unless the Sharks are magically do some. I mean, they added quite a few guys in free agency and trades and stuff, but it's not enough to say, he's going to be a contending team. I thought he'd be signing with the team that are closer, but that was kind of weird. Tyler Bertuzzi again going to Chicago, a rebuilding team. I'm not sure something they're thinking. I mean, I guess it's mentoring young guys, playing with some of these stars or young stars. What are your thoughts on that, though, Jacob? I mean, what do you think about the veterans going to rebuilding teams? They're probably not going to be there when they actually are good.
I think the Blackhawks are really going to surprise some people next year. So I'm going to back up. What Kyle Davidson has done, I think, is incredibly impressive. And it's easy to do when you are one of the most historic franchises in the league and everybody wants to play for Chicago. But he spent 3 years tearing down the team, getting as many assets as he could, and he got some really, really good prospects. And I think that they have one of the best farm systems, even with Connor Bedard graduating. And if you want to say Kevin Korchinski graduated too, they still have a fantastic prospect pool. You look at what they did today. They added Tyler Bertuzzi, Teuvo Teravainen, Ilya Mikheyev before, Pat Maroon, Alec Martinez, TJ Brody, and Laurent Brossoit. And Peter Mrazek played fantastic last year.
Yeah, true.
I think that this team, I don't want to knock on the door and say playoffs. That's too much, especially in the Central Division right now. But the Chicago Blackhawks got significantly better. And adding Artem Levshunov, he's another fantastic prospect that's going to come in and really help this team. Probably not this upcoming year, but I would say 2 years down the road, he'll be in the NHL. I love what they're doing. And I think the Bertuzzi, where this conversation started, I think the Bertuzzi was a great fit, and he's probably going to play alongside Connor Bedard and Philip Kurashev and just kind of be the jerk to play with or play against, but
yeah,
for your line. Yes. Not
what
a
do you
jerk
think
to play with.
about Toffoli going to San Jose, though? I mean, that one just kind of got me. I mean, I wasn't really sure what he thinks the team is going to be, unless he's just thinking he's just going to be a mentor and just wants to be with a young up and coming team, I guess, for the rest of his career here.
Yeah, there was a lot of promise on the sorry.
I was with the note in Toffoli. I think it says more about the Sharks than it does about Toffoli, just because there's so much pressure at this point to just you got to get players in, got to get dudes there, but they got to start, showing that they're somewhere. When you look at their all the rebuilds around the NHL, they've been at the bottom where it's been. You ask how many core players on that roster, how many players can you say we can build around? Not even prospects, just NHL ready players. And the answer for a long time was honestly zero. Now they're starting to get some players in there, like Will Smith's gonna make his way in. You have Eklund, I believe. You have some younger and now Macklin Celebrini, but there's a lot of pressure, especially when Will Greer's in his third or fourth year as the GM now, and they are replacing head coaches, which I mean, David Quinn, you could talk about whether he was right for the rebuild all along, but they're rebuilding after a failed rebuild. And at this point, the pressure's on to at least show progress. That's kind of, so with the Toffoli thing, that's what I thought of. Chicago's kind of interesting because all of a sudden they're looking like an older team. Alec Martinez is 36. Teravainen's coming in. You have all these older players, and I do wonder when you have a generational talent like Bedard, and I don't want to say your championship window is going to be around for a while, but you're going to always have. I mean, if you have him and you have some young players to build around, where do you go from there? Do you want to bring in these veterans now and try to win? Try to first of all win now when these prospects aren't necessarily ready to win now, and two, do you want to just get into the playoffs now? But in terms of long-term sustainability, having all these players come in, is that what you want to do? I don't know. I like the direction the Blackhawks are heading in, where they have all these young pieces in place and they have all these promising things going for them on their roster, and Bedard leading the way. These moves, I think it's definitely going to put them back in the conversation for, okay, they're going to now be a playoff team. I mean, McDavid was a playoff team in his second year, I think, right? He was on a playoff. I mean, I think the Oilers made the playoffs their second year. So I think this helps them with that. I do wonder though, if for in terms of long term competing in the Western Conference, whether you want to do this or not, or just take it slowly. I don't know.
Chicago is interesting. I actually do like when you listed all that, Jacob. I'm like, man, they did add actually quite a few really useful players that could potentially make them a playoff team or close to, and not be a lottery pick next year. Which, I mean, looking on paper, they shouldn't be unless a bunch of injuries happen, like what happened at the beginning of last season, getting Taylor Hall getting hurt and a bunch of other stuff happening, and that kind of derailed them really early on. So, I mean, we'll see how it all goes, but, Ted Ryan returning to the team he was on a while ago, and now he's older and he's going to be able to make more of an impact. I actually do like a lot of their signs for sure.
And I will say one thing. I would compare these Blackhawks to the Arizona Coyotes of last year. They were a surprise team, which, just to put it out there on Fantasy Forecheck, when we were doing that, Jacob and I both predicted that. The Coyotes were a very good team, almost playoffs, until they hit their, what was a 16-game losing streak, and that just ruined it for them, obviously. But like, they were a really good team out of the gate, and the majority of the season outside of that stretch, they would have been a couple points out of the playoffs. And I think that's kind of how Chicago's season's going to go.
They get the good goaltending. I think that's their biggest thing, and their defense comes together and is good. I think they've got enough of the offense to do it. Can they keep the puck out of their own net? And then if they can, then they may be a really surprising team.
But they have a good veteran defense core. Like, they have Alex Vlasic and Seth Jones, Kevin Korchinski, who's young, Connor Murphy, and now Alec Martinez and TJ Brody. Like, that's a good defense group.
Yeah, I wonder, maybe the depth scoring could be the thing. I mean, if Frank Nazar comes on this year, then you have a second line center, middle six center. So it really does change your dynamics. But that maybe depth scoring could be the thing, and I guess goaltending also. But yeah, that's always like the what if part of that.
Yeah, Brossoit has shown he can be a good goalie, and if you have a tandem with Mrazek and he has a similar season, that's a pretty good tandem. 1A, 1B if you split the time. Yeah, that's going to be the team that's going to be able to be watched for sure. We kind of jumped into the winners losers a bit with Chicago. I mentioned them, but yeah, it's a good talking point for sure. Let's jump into winners and losers for at least for today. I mean, obviously we won't know if they're actual winners until later on in the season. But Jacob, who's your early winner on this day? I mean, apart from Chicago, it seems like we're kind of becoming a bit of a winner so far here.
I'm gonna stick with I was talking about Chandler Stevenson already, and I'm gonna stick with the Seattle Kraken. They made some pretty good additions. They signed I think it was just Brandon Montour and Stevenson at the NHL level. But you add Brandon Montour to a defense group that already has Vince Dunn, Adam Larson. Like, this is a really quality defense group now, and they're all kind of players that are underrated. And Montour, outside of his 72-point season last year, has been underrated, and he was this year. Arguably, he didn't put up as many points, but people just didn't appreciate how good he was for the Florida Panthers. And now Seattle is getting a Stanley Cup champion. So I think that they made those two moves, and it made them significantly better. I think that those two moves are more impactful to the Kraken than any other moves to any other team.
I agree, and especially Chicago, after a season that, they made the playoffs in there before, and then they kind of fell out, and now they're kind of thinking, well, we want to go back there, and yeah, adding those two guys, that's actually some pretty big signings. And that solidifies, I mean, like you mentioned Chandler Stevenson already. He is a very underrated center. And we talked about him being, the second line center on the Vegas Golden Knights. He was actually their top line center before Jack Eichel came.
Yeah.
And he was pretty good in that role. I mean, going into and playing, like you said, with Beniers, and he's a very good, versatile center. And he's going to fit in really well in Seattle for sure. And then Montour, we saw what he's been doing in Florida, and adds to a pretty good defense group that they have already, with Vince Dunn and Adam Larson. And that's a pretty good group now. we'll see how he kind of. I think he kind of maybe replaces what Carson Soucy brought before he left, and that maybe a bit more offense. Not maybe, definitely a bit more offense. And that's yeah, I'd say Seattle's a pretty good pick for a winner right now too. But far from Chicago, which we already said. Mike, what about you? Any winner for you?
Yeah, I mean, I keep going back to the I mean the Predators maybe is a winner, but other than that, the thing that's on my mind is not necessarily the signings, but a lot of the teams that did their re-signings. So like the Hurricanes stand out re-signing Jacob Slavin, where and I just like every year the Hurricanes go through this where they go through turnover, but then it's like, oh, they still have the same 4 or 5 players, the core players that they build around, and they've kind of pivoted again. So I like what they've done, and I mean I do wonder if they probably. I mean my phone's off, so I don't know if they signed Jarvis to a big deal. It probably happened while we're recording
Not
this
yet.
now. So okay,
Not yet.
I wonder what that's going to look like because they kind of got to get that done, but and that's going to be a big contract. But overall, I like how they pivoted after losing Gensel. Another team that made a big re-signing, the Montreal Canadiens. They extended Slavkovsky. And I think about this where the AAV is pretty good if you think he's going to become a star. And we've watched him last year, and it's like this guy is a superstar in the making. And if you look at that term, that's ability to age gracefully. And if you're the Canadians, you're really excited about the core you have now and following the draft, all those things. That's just another one that I just keep thinking about these re-signing moves. So those are 2 winners right off the bat.
Sure, and Carolina added Sean Walker on a pretty good
Yeah.
deal, 3.6. Gostisbehere, who had a really good season in Detroit, another 3 million. That's not bad. They lost Brett Pesce to the New Jersey Devils, and they kind of replaced him with Sean Walker.
Pesce
really.
and Shea also. So
yeah, and Shea too was they
you
basically
just
replaced
replace
him
them.
with Walker and Gostisbehere. I mean, there you go. Yeah, Carolina is a pretty good, especially re-signing Martinook too. And that was a guy that they thought maybe could have gone to free agency, and he definitely would have been signed by someone. And for 3 million for what he does, that's a pretty good salary too. So yeah, Carolina is a pretty good one. Mine, my one right away was the Nashville Predators because of the big signings that they made and how they pretty much added a lot of depth. Now they have like 2 guys for a second line that, like we already said, about 40 goal scorers on your second line now, because they're probably going to keep that top line together, which is really good last season. And these are 2 guys that you're probably going to get at least 30 goals out of, and you add them to a team that's a pretty solid team already. They did surprise last season, but you add a couple guys, and then they had re-signed UC Saros already to a really good, really long-term deal. So they've got their goaltender, they got good defense core, and now really good forward group. So Nashville's a definite winner for me today, and from the other teams too. All right, quickly, some losers. I mean, again, this is subjective because we don't know. I mean, some of these signings may end up being really good, but looking at it right now, Jacob, who's a loser? Either the fact that they weren't even in the market and didn't do anything, or the signings were kind of not good.
But yeah, you say we don't know these signings might turn out to be really good. The Anaheim Ducks did not make a single one. They are the biggest losers. They did not. That was a bit aggressive. They're the biggest losers of free agency.
Yeah.
They're still $9 million under the cap floor and didn't make a signing today. They showed last year by signing Radko Gudas and Alex Killorn that they want to take a step. They did not. And then they just did nothing this year. Like they brought back a couple RFAs. They brought back Urho Vakanainen and Brett Leeson. That's all they did today. Like, what are you doing? I don't know.
You know what's funny is that I've been saying for years that the Ducks making those Killorn type of signings is like the drunken sailor type of thing. Where if you're rebuilding, why are you bringing these players to try to compete? The John Klingberg deal, for example, epitomizes that. You bring in a guy on a 1-year deal, only to have to trade him at the deadline for pennies on the dollar because you were like, we want to compete. He's the last player that's going to put us over the top. So it's funny that now that they're doing nothing, I'm like, wait, this actually, I prefer this for them. But Yeah, they've been rebuilding for a while, so it's one of those like drunken sailor. You don't know what direction they're going in.
Sure. Mike, who's your loser of today here?
Yeah. I've got two that stand out. I've mentioned the Capitals earlier, but that's not necessarily anything they did. I mean, the Chychrun deal, I guess you could throw into that just because I don't know what direction they're heading in. Another team, I don't want to criticize the signing, but I just the overall structure of the team just kind of has me concerned is the Columbus Blue Jackets. And I know are I know like it's been a rough few years for them. The first thing that I have an issue with is who's their head coach right now? Did they hire someone yet? I
Oh,
don't think so.
no.
So you hear the cliche of they're drafting him to play under Phil and the coach. He's going to play in the Talkett way. He's going to play in the DJ Smith way or whatever way. They don't have a guy. They don't have a player who you're talking about signing. Like why are like when it comes to free agents usually come. I want to play for Phil and the blank coach, Rod Brindamore, whoever. They don't
Mm.
have that guy right now. They don't have a coach. And then the Monahan signing, where I mean it could work out, obviously. I think the bigger thing for Columbus is when they're rebuilding is that now they're bringing another guy who another veteran type of player. I mean, maybe he'll be a mentor type for like Fantilli and the other young players there, but I do question whether first of all what's going on there, and uh second where are they trying to? I mean, are they bringing Monahan to be a mentor? Or are they trying to have bring him in to kind of compete? Which I
Mm.
wonder. I mean, he has a relationship with Gaudreau, which helps, but
Mm.
I do wonder just what's going on there.
It is an interesting thing. Like, example of playing for a coach or adding players to go for the coach you got is the Vancouver Canucks today,
Yeah,
adding Jake DeBrusk, Danton Heinen, and Vincent Desharnais. Common theme. These guys are going to be able to play for Tocchet, and they're Tocchet type players. And especially Jake DeBrusk, I'm like, this is a guy that's going to just thrive under Tocchet. I mean, he just plays that style that he likes, and Heinen too. It's funny how the Canucks swapped Bruins, and the Bruins swapped Canucks, Zadorov, Lindholm to Boston, and then the Canucks got Heinen, Forbort, and DeBrusk. It was just funny. I was like, what did they just do a trade? Like, let's just trade these
might as
guys.
well.
I on that note, I do like the signings that the Canucks made today. Because I mean, yeah, the DeBrusk deal's maybe a bit long at 7 years, but 5.5 million. A lot of people are saying that he's kind of like how when JT Miller got traded to the Canucks, similar production, similar type player too, and not a center. I mean, he's just a winger, but if he turns into JT Miller, I am fine with 5.5 million because if he's 80 plus points, it's good for me. But yeah, I liked what the Canucks did. I mean, we kind of jumped over. I should have said they're a winner. I don't know about winner. I think maybe not on the day, but I just like what they did. Um, for the little signs, everyone's kind of freaking out they didn't get Stamkos or missed out on some big names and weren't able to re-sign Lindholm. But you're looking at the money that they got. Overall, I think they did a pretty good job. So I like what the Canucks did. We'll see how it all kind of fits. And
It
I
is
mean,
weird how average it is
they replaced six
because
seven for a 6-7 defense. They got Desharnais to replace
Yeah.
the Fedorov
it
six.
it is weird after all the talk about like Pedersen traded for Gensel, traded for traded for it's like all those trade talks, and then they just had an average sort of free agency.
It's Alvin. I mean, that's what he does. I don't know
Yeah,
why we would expect something else. Every free agency he's been here, he's signed. I mean, his bigger signings aren't really big, and they end up being pretty effective throughout the season. I'd say the Mikheyev one has probably been the most biggest flop, but other than that, they've been all pretty good. All right. Well, thanks, Jacob. Thanks, Mike, for coming on and talking free agency. We're probably going to have probably a quiet next bit because all the big names are gone off the board. There'll be some small signings, and we'll end up maybe talking about that. But make sure to check out everything at thehockeybears.com. We got everything with the free agent tracker, lots of reaction pieces after all the signings, and because there's a lot of them, so keep track. And also we got the Substack. as well. That gives you all the articles that are coming out, and you can take a look at that too. So, but until our next episode, we'll see you next time.